So here's the story that he tells. There's Mike Rogers, who is, if I recall correctly, his sister is dating Travis. So he's like a brother-in-law almost. And there's Mike Rogers, there's Travis Walton, and there are several other guys there. They're cutting trees. They're behind on a contract. Time is growing short. A contract to cut down these trees. Time is short, and then as they're heading back, the way Travis reports it is that. Oh, wait a minute. How do I do this? Okay. There's a. They're driving back. There's a craft that comes near them. Travis goes out, and as he recalls later on, he said he went out thinking that this craft wasn't going to stay there very long, like a deer or something. Usually a deer is only there for a moment, then scurries away. That's what he figured would happen, and then the craft zaps him with a ray or something, knocks him out, or I think he says like knocks him into the air, and then the other people in the truck or vehicle become really scared. They just take right off. So they report. I believe that as I recall, they report Travis Walton missing. As I recall, he's missing for 5 days, and then Travis then calls someone and to come get him, and I think it's from a payphone, and he has some growth on his face as if he hadn't shaved in a while, and so he reports what happened to him, or he reports his claim of what happened to him, and one of the publications of this account appears in National Enquirer, which is known as a tabloid for reporting sensationalistic claims. It's not the bevy of truth. It's not the bevy of scientific research. And I believe even at the time, I know later on, the National Enquirer was putting out an award, a monetary reward, if someone could have good evidence of an alien encounter. So that may have played a factor in this. Okay, so the story that he recounted is that he wakes up in a craft, and he wakes up. He's frightened by these short, gray alien, large heads, gray figures around him wearing, well, in the artist's conception, they're depicted as wearing orange bodysuits, skin-tight suits, and they back away. He grabs something to use like as a potential weapon, just to fend them off. They back away, and he's alone. And he wanders into another room, and he sees like a more human figure, long. Well, in the artist's conception, he's depicted as long. The figure is depicted as having long blonde hair, and he thinks, "Oh, maybe I'm being rescued." So he tries to communicate with this more human-looking figure, and then he's taken out of that craft into what seems to be a larger craft or a larger room, and there may be other craft there, but anyway, he's taken into a larger room outside of this. Like this craft is parked within this larger, whatever it was, craft or room or something, and then that's the last memory he has, and then he wakes up and so forth. So I suspect that this case was, I remember because I was born shortly after that, but the event itself takes place November 5th. In other words, the abduction occurs November 5th, 1975, and I guess it would have been like November 10th or something, 1975, when he's found alive, because the police were suspecting that they had killed Mike Travis, but he shows up alive. Just goes to show, don't jump to conclusions. Like, don't prosecute people for suspicion of murder without a body. So there's been speculation that it was faked or he was doing it for publicity, whatever, but he's been adamant, and he and Mike Rogers have maintained this story. So what I suspect happened was that way back with the Betty and Barney Hill case, the Betty and Barney Hill see a sighting. It's at Mountain Head or Indian Head, and they confuse things, and they think it's a craft. And then Betty becomes exposed to UFO lore, and then she's also having these dreams, possibly inspired by the Twilight Zone episode and then the Outer Limits episodes. And then she and Barney may have shared information or shared exposure of these things that later enter into their hypnosis sessions, and this story becomes fabricated. Not that they're lying, but it literally fabricates into a UFO abduction case, and then it's publicized. There's a movie made about it, dramatizing it. It airs on NBC in the fall. If I said spring before, I meant fall 1975, and then shortly after that, Travis Walton and his buddies, his coworkers, are late on their contracts. They're worried, and maybe Travis had other motives too, to gain publicity for whatever reason, and so they concoct this thing where Travis hides away, and he's mysteriously found again, probably inspired by the UFO incident that aired on TV shortly before, and that's what I think may have actually happened. So there you go. I should mention, where did UFO abduction research, or did the phenomenon of UFO abductions go after that? Well, there are other cases. 1960s, I believe, and then 1970s, there were other encounters with aliens connected with UFOs, but they weren't all gray aliens. That's what intrigues me. You had more of a variety of aliens before this common impression of a gray alien came out, or developed. There's a Pascagoula case where Charles Hickman and forget the other person's name. There were two men who claimed to have been abducted. One of them recalls waking up and then seeing this large eye, kind of scan or go over his body, and there's a Kelly Hopkinsville case where it's a farmhouse, and I may want to go into that in another video. There are creatures. I won't get into the details, but basically there are creatures that are seen in the windows, and they're shot at, and then they kind of bounce and fall down and scurry away. They're depicted as, there was an artist conception somebody made. They have large, pointed, sort of like, if you've seen the movie Gremlins, the gremlin ears, how they come out and point triangularly, and they're described as, I think they were described as gray, however, and that's where the term little gray aliens, from one documentary, that's what I learned, that's where that phrase kind of came from, and then later it was changed to little green men, little gray men. And they have longer arms, that droop down towards their legs, their feet. And they have kind of rounded faces that come down to a point. Basically, my point is that they are very different from the gray alien popular great alien image. So he had several different accounts of these different creatures. And then, so, okay, going forward to Travis Walton, he reports the gray alien, something more like the gray alien, even though the gray alien is wearing a skin-tight suit. Um, Bud Hopkins is a painter in New York City, and don't remember exactly how, but I guess he networks or becomes connected in some way with people having these episodes of missing time, just like Betty and Barney Hill couldn't remember, oddly couldn't remember like a certain period during their night trip. And so he works with, as I recall, he works with Dr. Aphrodite Clamar, who does have a psychiatrist, psychology background, who has some training in hypnosis. And then he begins hypnosis sessions himself, and he eventually compiles several cases into a book called Missing Time. And then he, I guess about that time, he one of the people that he meets and gets to know is someone named Whitley Strieber, Strieber, who's a famous New York City author of horror fiction. And so Whitley Strieber sits in on some of his sessions, as I recall. And then Bud Hopkins publishes his second book. His first book was something like 1981, thereabout, like 1981. And then his second book is called Intruders, focusing on a specific case of a woman who had sent him letters, or sent a letter to him saying, hey, I read your book and I have these symptoms, or I have these, that's not the way she put it, but like this reminds me, like I have some things too, I've experienced some things too that are reminiscent of what you were talking about with these cases of missing time. So he focuses the second book on her, and he changes the name of where she lived. He changes her name. I'm trying to remember. Kathy Davis was the name that he gave her. He's very careful about not giving away names of real people. He uses pseudonyms. But she has since come out with her own book, giving her real name and talking about her own case. That was published in 1987, and concurrent with the publication of that book was another book by Whitley Strieber called Communion, by a horror fiction writer called Communion, with this alien head on the cover. And from what I've read in UFO lore and been exposed to things on TV, that just seeing that cover in bookstores, for example, elicited memories or elicited emotional reactions from people saying, ooh, that face looks familiar, or something about the face, like a visceral reaction to this face. And it's a bald-headed, sort of gray alien. Although that gray alien looks different from, or if you can call it a gray alien, that alien head, that hairless head, looks different than the gray aliens normally described, sort of, in the way that the normal gray alien just has a circular, large head, whereas the alien depicted on the cover of Communion was more angular and pointed, had a very pointed chin, large eyes, small slit for a mouth, and so forth. Incidentally, like as I was saying before, the Betty and Barney Hill case, this concept of dream states, and dreams. It's interesting that telepathy plays a part in alien abductions. Because have you ever, if in a dream, have you ever seen people's lips actually moving, or is it more like you know what the other person is in your dream is thinking? Um, so Whitley Strieber became famous in his own right for telling this true story of communion. Now, I read somewhere that communion was originally published. If anybody can track this down, I'd really love to see it. Communion was originally published with the title like fiction, something indicating it was fiction, and then subsequent publications of it have it as a true story or a nonfiction account. That would be very interesting to find the first few copies that if and see if they did say that was a fictional account. But I like his writing. I just enjoy his writing and speculation. It's just fun reading from a novelist, colorful novelist. He comes out with a second book called Transformation, and those of you curious about how I got into it, that book I borrowed along with several other books from the library right before a Boy Scout trip, a Boy Scout camp out, and that's how I discovered it. And then I tracked down his first book, Communion. So the second book I read first, called Transformations, and so at some point the concept of the gray alien became more widespread and so forth. It was also with the media and with depictions in the media, portraying it more often, more frequently, and dramatizations. Like for example, Intruders in like I think 1991 or 92, there was a two-part movie that had been available on DVD. I don't know if it still is, called Intruders, and I can't remember the actor, but there was a somewhat famous actor, well-known actor, recognizable name, who played um, who played a doctor. In other words, it's based on Bud Hopkins' book Intruders, but he plays a doctor who explores the case of two sisters who each have separate lives, and it basically it's the typical alien abduction thing where they're babies. Oh yeah. So that entered into the picture. There's a fascinating book I have, and I don't remember the. I think it's called Watch the Skies, but it's a fascinating like documentation or journey, like summation, chapter by chapter of the evolution of the whole UFO phenomenon, as little elements of the lore crept in. Like first you have sightings of craft, and then you have, like with Betty and Barney Hill, you have this concept of people being abducted, and then after that, at some point, you have babies being made, or this hybrid scheme where the alien during this abduction, this hypnosis session, recounting under hypnosis, you have the memory of the aliens presenting like these small babies, and this alien human hybrid concept, and that creeps in, and so little by little it evolves like an actual myth. And I don't mean myth in the term in the sense that it's all fabrication or just all not true. I mean myth literally in terms of something, an accepted like perception or accepted story changing over time and mutating, literally mutating over time. So I guess that's all I have to say on this, but I certainly will explore it further. There's another case, the Antonio Villas Boas case, that, as I recall, happened in 1957. And I was reading, it's a story, I think it's South America, where somebody who's not that, he's characterized as not that literate. He's a farmer, not to denigrate farmers or farming, but anyway, he sees I think he sees a craft. He's abducted. Anyway, he's abducted, and there's this woman. He finds himself in a room. I guess I am talking about the story. Okay, he's in a room, and there's this alien, female alien. There's this alien that he perceives to be female, They have sex. During the sex, she grunts and groans, or she makes grunting sounds, and he feels like he's just an animal being used. And then at some point, she stops and she points to her belly, and then she points upward, and then that's the end of the abduction account. There are other little elements that I know I'm leaving out from, because I don't remember the specifics, but that's the basic story. Um, so it's interesting that maybe 10 years ago, something like that, I was reading a book called Mirage Men, and there's also a corresponding documentary also called Mirage Men that explore alternative explanations for these things, but not just debunking the stuff. It's more like the book explores the covert government operations and the trying to remember the name of it. There's I can't his name escapes me, but he was a counterintelligence expert from a certain branch of the military, and wears glasses. He has kind of a pudgy face and so forth. And he's come out. He appears in a documentary too. I can't remember his name, but anyway, he and someone else were both called the aviary, as in birds. And his assignment was there was some other person who was uncomfortably close to a military site, and he was taking pictures. He was concerned about this military site and taking pictures of aircraft, and I think he was concerned about radiation or something. And then this man, I can't remember his name, was tasked with becoming friends with him, and then steering him towards the fact that these are aliens, and throwing in and that's where Majestic 12 comes in, feeding him disinformation. He was a disinformation specialist, and he admits to it. Say that these are actually aliens, and it becomes a whole drama, like a soap opera drama, and it makes this guy become so paranoid. He literally, psychologically, he's just screwed up because of this. I think is it the Bent Waters case? Anyway, he becomes so screwed up, and then the guy, who's the military specialist, the military person, has since said, so many words, he's ashamed about what happened, or it's a sad story about what happened to this guy. And in the midst of that, there were these documents that have been doctored up, and UFO researchers have looked in and actually tracked down the origin of these Majestic 12 documents, which supposedly were created during the Eisenhower administration about UFOs. In other words, the government is in cahoots, or there's some government involvement, secret government involvement with UFOs, and this whole mythical story behind that. The Majestic 12 is a secret team. I almost want to say Illuminati, but like a secret government group of 12 men, and one of the documents names the 12, and they're in charge of keeping the stuff hush. They're almost like the Men in Black. I guess that's a closer term. They're almost like Men in Black. And so UFO researchers actually track down in some cases, the original documents. Like, for example, the original document that one of the Majestic 12 documents has Harry Truman's signature on it. Well, they tracked down what they believe was the original source of this signature by Harry Truman, because I guess presumably you never sign, or it's very infrequent that you sign your name the same way twice. So they believe they tracked that down, and they noticed, in terms of the font and the style of the typing, because this is not, remember, this isn't on computer. This is all typed on you put a piece of paper through, and it's ink, and it's actually hammers hitting the piece of paper. Well, they think they tracked down what typewriter was used to create this, and maybe I want to go into that further in a different video, but it's the Majestic 12 stuff. So that evolved. So you get to where we are now with alien-human hybrids and popularization of alien greys and abductions and so forth. So, all right. So I guess that concludes what I wanted with this video. Hope you have a good day, and I'll see you soon.